Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Mindful Homestead. My name is Jack, and today we are going to be talking a little bit about tractors and the deceiving marketing practices that are out there. I shouldn't really even say deceiving marketing practices. A little bit misleading if you're uninformed on how tractors are marketed, but we'll get more into that in a little bit. Before we get too far into this video though, I want to mention that the 2023 Homesteaders of New England Fall Gathering, look, I'm wearing the shirt right here. It's pretty cool. That is happening September 9th and 10th. We got some killer speakers lined up. We've got Al from Lumna Acres coming down. We've got Morgan from Goldshaw Farm. We've got Troy McClung from the Pastured Pig Podcast and Red Tool House. We got a bunch of other great demonstrations and speakers and vendors lined up, and we really want to have you there. Tickets are on sale now. Go to www.newenglandhomesteaders.com. They're only $25 for the weekend. That gets you in both Saturday and Sunday. We want to keep growing this thing every year, but we need people to show up for that to happen. So head down to the website. I'll link it in the description and get your tickets today. As many of you are aware though, we've had our 2023 TYM 494 cab for about 2 months now, and I'm absolutely loving it so far. So when we started looking for a tractor to buy, we had a variety of different desires and essentially a list of wants and needs that we wanted and needed to have in the tractor that we were going to be using to replace our Kubota BX. One of the wants that we had on the list was a cab. Obviously, we used the tractor to deal with snow removal in the winter, and having heat inside the tractor was something that I was interested in having. I'd used the Kubota for a while. The Kubota was great at doing what it did, but there were times where it was either snowing or it would be raining after a snowstorm, and really not having that climate controlled, dry, comfortable environment put a damper on the time I wanted to spend on the tractor. One of the things that we had listed as a need was the ability to lift 2,000 pounds out of the bed of my truck and into the garage. That stemmed mostly from the animal feed that we're buying for our pigs primarily, and then secondarily chickens and turkeys on the farm. See, we'd been buying pig food bagged by the ton for the last few years, and currently in New Hampshire, the best price you're gonna get on that is around $600 to $700 a ton. Even buying directly from grain mills, if we were looking to have bagged feed, we ran into the issue of it costing that much. If we didn't have it in bags, we couldn't move it from the truck effectively and quickly into the garage to get it dry, to get it stored in whatever smaller containers we wanted to. Normally, we just picked it up bag by bag, put it into the garage on top of another pallet, we restacked it, and then that led to varmint issues. We had mice, we had rats last year, which we were not really happy about. So we told ourselves that if we were buying a new tractor, it needed to at least be able to lift a 2,000 pound bulk tow out of the back of my truck and into the garage. It didn't have to move it over a long distance, but it did have to be able to pick it up and move it 10, 20 feet. What that led to me doing was narrowing my search considerably by looking at the lift capacities of the tractors or the loaders on the tractors that I was looking to purchase. And I ended up doing a lot of research because the way that different tractor manufacturers measure their lift capacities can be a little bit unscrupulous sometimes. Let me take you down here and show you what I mean. Right here, you can see the front of the loader on our TYM, and you can see these pins right here. That is where a lot of tractor manufacturers are listing their loading capacity. You'll see it listed as being a capacity at the pins to full height. And sometimes they'll say full height, sometimes they'll give an inch measurement at what height. But by and large, a lot of these weight capacities are being measured at the pins. The problem is, you can see from my pins out to where the forks even begin, there's like a solid 8 or 9 inches there, possibly even a foot. I mean, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Let's say there's a foot there. The amount of leverage out at that distance versus what's here at the pins is pretty different. You're talking, you're going to get a drastic difference in lifting capacity here versus the leverage out there. So while yes, this tractor is capable of lifting 2,700 pounds, which is its rated capacity to full height, at those pins, in addition to the change in leverage that you're going to see from moving further from those pins to carry your load, You also have to factor in the weight of whatever your attachment is. So if you've got a bucket, if you've got a set of pallet forks like we have here, if you've got a grapple, you have to factor that weight in and take that off of whatever your max capacity is with your loader. So 2,050 pounds for the pallet of feed. I think these forks weigh 250 pounds. I forget exactly the weight on these in particular, but 250 pounds here. And you're now talking, not only is all of that weight back against the pins, that weight is out on the forks. I mean, in the you know, really your center of gravity on a pallet of feed is right here. If you tilt it back, you can move it this way a little bit, but your center of gravity is not near the pins. So the first thing I wanted to address is that the lifting capacity of the tractor that you're going to see mentioned in the collateral, the owner's manuals and things like that of the tractor, is not necessarily the actual lifting capacity of that tractor. It is, but it's not, because that's not necessarily the work it's going to do. The ability of a tractor to lift things is a very helpful ability that they have. If you're going to use that as a buying criteria, one thing you should remember is that if you're looking to lift 2,000 pounds, you need to look at a tractor that lifts more than 2,000 pounds, because the number that you're being given is not necessarily an effective measure of the work that it can do. So you go up from there. And that's, you know, that's easy enough way to look at it. Now I set this next shot up kind of far away from the tractor because I want to show you something else that's happening in the tractor industry that is getting you increased loader capacities on what are generally considered smaller tractors. This is, you know, a 48 horse tractor, 49 horsepower tractor. I think it's like 48 and change. So we'll call it a 50. It's in the 50 horsepower class of tractors. This, with the rear tires filled and the loader on, I believe weighs in the neighborhood of 6,500 pounds. Don't quote me on the exact number, but that's what this tractor weighs. And for it to lift 2,700 pounds in a tractor this size, you wouldn't have necessarily seen that a few years ago. And there's a few design changes happening in tractors that, while they may increase the lifting capacity, they could limit things in other ways. And I wanted to kind of show you those right now and kind of what's going on here. If you look at this tractor, you can see your skid steer attachment is tucked in pretty tight to the end of the loader, which is a good thing, because that leverage we talked about earlier, there's not as much of it going on, which is big. But TYM in particular, and what you're seeing with some other manufacturers these days, is they're squeezing in the front of their tractors to bring everything closer to that front axle and closer to the pivot point of the loader, which is going to be back here. And what that does is, think about if you're holding a bucket of grain and I'm holding it right here with my elbow tucked in across my body and just my forearm holding it, versus holding that same bucket of grain extended way out here, which is taking more energy to do. Obviously holding it further out because the leverage is greater. Same thing with tractors nowadays. If you bring that load closer to your fulcrum point, which is these beefy plate steel mounts right there, you can get a bigger lift capacity out of a tractor that's smaller, because you're not putting the weight so far out. So the effective leverage and what wants to lift the back end of the tractor off the ground, that leverage is not going to be so great. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start this tractor up. I'm going to raise the loader up as high as it'll go. And there's one thing I want you to look at in the shot you have right now. I want you to look at how close the loader actually is to this grill guard on the front end of the tractor, because it's a little crazy. I'll show you. Our loader all the way up. I'm not standing under it, I'm standing in front of it. That way, if something was to fail, it wouldn't fall on me. But this is the loader all the way up, simulating the bucket in a full dump position. And what you can see, or what I hope you can see, let me walk around the back here, is just how close this grill guard is to where the bottom line of the bucket would be, which is right here, you've got maybe 6 inches of reach. So my height is, you know, let's call this 8 feet maybe. With my hand all the way up, I'm 6 feet, maybe another 2 feet. But you've got really your front clearance, your reach on this tractor at full height is about 6 inches. And obviously if you lower it down, you can get a little bit more reach out of it because it obviously moves in an arc. What I'm trying to get at really overall is if you had a loader that was longer and arguably had a lower lift capacity, it could end up, or it probably would end up, that you would get better height out of it and you would have more reach out of it at full height. If you had something like a dumpster that you were trying to fill, like we have a dumpster right here. We just had a new roof put on the house. We had a metal roof put on. It was due time. You would be able to get the front of this tractor closer to that dumpster with a tractor that had a longer loader arm on it, even though that loader arm or the set of loader arms might have a lower loader capacity. This is all physics. This is, you know, the longer your arms, the more reach you're gonna have, the more height you're gonna have, but the less power. Same thing we talked about again with the bucket of grain. Short arms, more power. Longer arms, less power. Neil from Messick actually has a great video where he talks about the whole, you know, at the pins versus, I think he says 500 millimeters in front of the pins. Kubota for a long time was giving their measurements 500 millimeters in front of those loader pins, which gives a pretty realistic statement of what you'd be able to lift in the bucket. Here's a gripe that I kind of take with that. If I were to take these pallet forks off and say I have just the frame there, and I took these D-rings and I shackled something to those D-rings, if I had my frame rolled back, I'm going to be getting my full lift capacity because those D-rings and whatever is tied to them would be centered right over the pins if it was rolled back a little bit. So yes, if you're using your bucket, you definitely need to look at, you know, what the weight, 500 millimeters in front of the pins. That's going to give you a realistic bucket or pallet fork or thing like that. However, if you're going to be using hooks, you're going to be using D-rings, you're going to be using any attachment where you can tuck things in back and roll it back and get them closer to the pins, you could theoretically do what your max lift capacity is. So I will link that video to Neil from Messick down in the description, so you can go check that out because it gives a lot of really good info. It's about 5 years old now, but everything is still relevant. But I did want to make this video and comment on it because I am seeing generally, as somebody who just came out of the tractor buying market, that loaders in general on a lot of brands are getting shorter. And that's fine if you don't need maximum height or you don't need maximum reach on the loader. For us, I mean, we're lifting a pallet out of the bed of the truck. It's not hard for me to get in there. If I have to, I can kind of scoot the pallet back toward me. But if you're looking to purchase a tractor where reach and maximum height are important to you, then you might want to consider definitely looking a little bit deeper into, okay, this tractor's got a great lift capacity, but how is it achieving that? Because honestly, folks, physics always wins. There's no way around it. We live on Earth and Earth has gravitational pull. Everything is fulcruming on that front axle. And if you put too much weight out in front of it and the back half of your tractor is not heavy enough to support that, I don't care how good of a tractor operator you are, if your two back tires are off the ground, you're not doing much tractor work that way. As I mentioned, Homesteaders of New England, September 9th and 10th, 2023. Go get your tickets now at newenglandhomesteaders.com. As I always say, thanks for watching, and I hope you're having a great day. Bye.